When Barron Trump became the target of a joke, Melania's bold move sparked a cultural reckoning. The night seemed like any other in the world of late-night television. The audience at the studio in Burbank, California, laughed along as the host, renowned for his biting wit and politically charged humor, cracked jokes at the expense of public figures. But then, in an unexpected turn, he turned his attention to Barron Trump, the youngest son of the former First Lady and President at the time. The joke was quick, sharp, and unmistakably aimed at the teenager. The audience's laughter was mixed, some chuckling hesitantly, others shifting uncomfortably in their seats. The comment wasn't just a light-hearted quip. It was a jab that cut deeper, targeting the child of a public figure who had largely stayed out of the spotlight. Within hours, the clip was everywhere. Social media exploded with hashtags like #BarronTrump trending on Twitter and Instagram. Memes and reactions flooded timelines as supporters of the Trump family and critics of the host voiced their opinions. Some called the joke tasteless and unnecessary, while others defended it as just comedy. News outlets were quick to pick up the story, dissecting every angle and reigniting debates over the boundaries of humor. At home in Palm Beach, Melania Trump watched the clip in disbelief. Her son had always been her priority, and she had worked tirelessly to shield him from the chaos of public life. The insult wasn't just a blow to Barron. It was a blow to her as a mother. She knew this wasn't something she could let slide. Her instincts as a parent kicked in, and she began drafting a statement to address the situation. But words alone weren't enough this time. As the backlash grew louder, Melania made a decision that would send shockwaves through the media. She would file a lawsuit. But what she didn't know was that this choice would spark a battle far larger than she could have anticipated. The following morning, Melania Trump's team released a statement to the press. It was measured yet stern, denouncing the TV host's comments as inappropriate and damaging. While her words struck a chord with her supporters, they weren't enough to quiet the growing controversy. Melania wasn't just angry. She was resolute. For years, she had endured criticism and ridicule as a public figure. But this attack on her son was personal, and she intended to fight back. She turned to one of the nation's top defamation attorneys, a woman known for her no-nonsense approach and high-profile victories. Together, they filed a lawsuit against the host and the network, alleging defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The legal filing painted a stark picture. The comment, though dressed up as humor, had crossed a line. It was no longer about free speech. It was about protecting a child's right to privacy and dignity. The lawsuit itself became a media event. News anchors debated whether Melania's case had merit, or if it was simply a strategic move to regain relevance. Supporters praised her courage, calling her a fierce mother defending her son, while critics accused her of using the lawsuit as a publicity stunt. Barron, meanwhile, stayed out of the limelight. Friends close to the family described him as a quiet teenager who rarely engaged with the media circus that surrounded his family. Melania's actions, however, spoke volumes about her priorities. She wasn't fighting for her reputation. She was fighting for his. The lawsuit had an immediate impact. Sponsors began distancing themselves from the late-night show, worried about the negative press. The host, known for his confidence, appeared more subdued in his next few broadcasts. Still, he refused to apologize, doubling down on his right to free speech and labeling the lawsuit as an attack on comedy itself. But as the days passed, the story grew even larger, pulling in voices from every corner of the country. And the battle was only just beginning. The lawsuit ignited a firestorm across every media platform. Cable news channels devoted hours to panel discussions. Online forums buzzed with debates, and podcasts dissected the situation from every angle. The country seemed split right down the middle. On one side were those who applauded Melania for standing up to what they called bullying disguised as comedy. Parents, in particular, resonated with her decision, flooding social media with messages of support. Protecting our kids should never be a question, one viral post read, accompanied by a picture of Barron during his father's time in office. On the other side, however, the backlash was fierce. Comedians and talk show hosts rallied around their embattled peer, claiming that the lawsuit set a dangerous precedent for creative expression. Some argued that public figures, including their families, were fair game for satire regardless of their age. If you can't take a joke, you shouldn't be in the public eye, one prominent host declared during a heated debate on his program. The conversation spilled out of the media and into coffee shops, workplaces, and dinner tables. In Los Angeles, college students debated the ethics of free speech during a campus rally. In a small diner in Topeka, Kansas, a group of retirees discussed whether the host had gone too far. The story wasn't just about Melania and Barron anymore. It was about what kind of behavior society was willing to tolerate under the banner of entertainment. Amid the chaos, the late-night host continued to push back. His monologues became more defiant, framing himself as a victim of censorship. His supporters cheered him on, but his critics pointed out that his jokes had taken on a sharper, almost bitter tone. The once charismatic figure now seemed weighed down by the controversy swirling around him. Networks felt the pressure, too. Ratings for the host's show began to dip, and rumors circulated that executives were reconsidering their support. Meanwhile, Melania's legal team moved swiftly, submitting additional evidence and statements to strengthen their case. The legal battle wasn't just a personal fight anymore. It was shaping up to be a cultural reckoning. But no one could have predicted the bombshell that was about to drop, threatening to change the course of the lawsuit entirely. When the trial began in Los Angeles Superior Court, it became the kind of spectacle the media couldn't resist. Paparazzi swarmed the courthouse steps, capturing images of Melania Trump arriving in tailored elegance, flanked by her legal team. On the other side, the late-night host entered with his attorneys, his face set in a determined expression. Inside, the atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. This wasn't just a trial. It was a referendum on modern entertainment. The prosecution opened with a searing argument, emphasizing the line between comedy and cruelty. They played the clip of the offending joke for the courtroom, the audio echoing in the silent chamber. Melania's lawyer described how the comment had deeply affected her son, painting a picture of a teenager caught in the crossfire of media sensationalism. "This is not about free speech," the lawyer asserted, her voice unwavering. "This is about a child's right to grow up without being ridiculed for sport." The defense, however, took a different tack. They leaned heavily on the First Amendment, arguing that comedy, no matter how offensive, deserved protection. The host's legal team presented decades of precedent supporting their case, portraying him as a misunderstood artist pushing boundaries. At one point, the host himself took the stand, delivering an impassioned testimony about his career and how the lawsuit threatened to stifle creativity. The courtroom was a theater of clashing ideologies, with each side presenting witnesses to bolster their arguments. Barron's former teachers testified about his quiet demeanor and how the media scrutiny had affected his schooling. Meanwhile, the defense brought in comedians who passionately argued that satire was a critical part of societal commentary. Public interest in the case reached a fever pitch. Every detail, from Melania's poised reactions to the host's fiery retorts, was analyzed and debated across every major platform. Late-night shows across the country avoided jokes about the trial altogether, worried about inadvertently becoming the next target of public scrutiny. But just as the trial seemed to be settling into a predictable rhythm, a new witness emerged, turning the case and the public's perception on its head. On what seemed like an otherwise routine day in court, the atmosphere shifted dramatically when the prosecution announced a surprise witness. The defense team exchanged uneasy glances as a former employee of the network, that aired the late-night show entered the courtroom. His name was William Carter, a former production assistant who had worked on the show for over 5 years before being dismissed under controversial circumstances. Carter's demeanor was calm but resolute as he was sworn in. As he began to speak, the tension in the room was palpable. He testified about the behind-the-scenes culture of the show, describing an environment where pushing boundaries often took precedence over ethics. But it wasn't his general observations that stunned the courtroom. It was the specific evidence he brought forward. From his briefcase, Carter produced emails, scripts, and internal communications that revealed something far more damaging than anyone had anticipated. According to Carter, the joke about Barron Trump wasn't an off-the-cuff remark. It had been planned, debated, and ultimately approved by higher-ups within the network. Worse, some of the correspondents suggested the joke was designed not for humor but to provoke controversy and generate ratings. Gasps rippled through the courtroom as the documents were displayed on the screen. In one particularly damning email, an executive wrote, "It'll get people talking. Controversy sells." For the first time, the focus of the trial shifted away from the host and toward the corporate machinery that had enabled the incident. The defense scrambled to recover, insisting that the host had acted independently and that the network's decisions were irrelevant to the case. But the damage was done. Carter's testimony had planted a seed of doubt, not just about the joke but about the motives behind it. Outside the courthouse, the revelation sent shockwaves through the media industry. Headlines screamed about the toxic culture within the network, and several of its executives were placed on administrative leave pending an internal investigation. The host, once the face of edgy comedy, now found himself isolated, his own employers unwilling to stand behind him. But even as the tide turned in Melania's favor, the case was far from over, and the final verdict would carry consequences no one could have foreseen. As the trial reached its conclusion, the courtroom was packed to capacity. Journalists filled the gallery, their pens poised to capture every detail. Outside, crowds gathered, split between supporters of Melania Trump and those rallying for the late-night host. The stakes were higher than ever, with public opinion tilting heavily after the bombshell revelations from William Carter. In their closing arguments, Melania's lawyer delivered a powerful statement. She didn't just argue for her client, but for every family that had been dragged into the public eye without consent. "This isn't about silencing comedy," she said, her voice steady and firm. "This is about accountability. It's about understanding that our words, especially those amplified to millions, have consequences." The defense, battered but determined, made one final plea. They warned that a ruling against the host could create a chilling effect on comedians everywhere. "Where do we draw the line?" they asked. "At what point does protecting feelings infringe upon the freedom to challenge and provoke?" After hours of deliberation, the jury returned with their verdict. The host was found liable for defamation, and the network was ordered to pay significant damages for its role in fostering a culture of sensationalism. The judge, however, made it clear that the ruling wasn't an attack on free speech, but a recognition that humor cannot come at the expense of a child's dignity. The verdict sent ripples through the media world. For Melania, it was a bittersweet victory. She had stood up for her son and won, but the experience had been exhausting. In a brief statement to the press, she expressed her hope that the case would serve as a reminder to approach public discourse with greater care and respect. For the host, the fallout was severe. Sponsors pulled out, his network distanced itself, and his show was placed on indefinite hiatus. But the case also prompted important conversations across the country. People debated the boundaries of comedy, the responsibilities of public figures, and the ethics of media sensationalism. In the weeks that followed, new initiatives emerged to address the toxic culture in entertainment. Comedians began reevaluating their material, networks implemented stricter oversight, and audiences became more mindful of what they chose to support. And through it all, one lesson became clear. While free speech is a right, respect and empathy are responsibilities we all share. As the dust began to settle, the nation found itself reflecting on the deeper implications of the trial. Conversations shifted from the specifics of the case to the broader cultural questions it raised. Where is the line between humor and harm? How do we balance the right to free speech with the need for accountability? For many parents, Melania's battle was a wake-up call. It reminded them of the importance of standing up for their children in an increasingly digital and unforgiving world. One mother in Des Moines shared her thoughts in a viral video. If someone with Melania Trump's platform can face this kind of struggle, what does that mean for the rest of us? This trial wasn't just about Barron. It was about all our kids. For the entertainment industry, the verdict was a reckoning. Networks and production companies started reevaluating their approach to comedy, understanding that cheap shots and controversy-driven content came at a cost. The trial inspired a renewed focus on creating humor that challenged norms without demeaning individuals. On the streets, in homes, and across classrooms, people began to discuss the ripple effects of their words and actions. The trial highlighted how something as simple as a joke could spiral into a larger conversation about values, ethics, and respect. But the story's impact extended beyond Barron, Melania, or the host. It became a cultural milestone, teaching that while we have the freedom to speak, we must also consider the power of our words. Humor can unite, but it can also divide, and the responsibility to choose wisely rests with all of us. And so, as the cameras turned off and the world moved forward, one message remained. Compassion must always come first. The trial may have ended, but the lessons it left behind are more relevant than ever. It's up to all of us to ensure that our words build bridges, not walls, and that we challenge others with respect, not cruelty. Let's continue these conversations, striving for a world where we can laugh, disagree, and grow without tearing each other down.